In Chapter 17, we begin our study of the cardiovascular system. Chapter 17, we're focusing just at the heart. Then we get into the next chapter where we look at the blood vessels, both arteries, veins, and capillaries. And then in the final chapter of the unit, we look at the blood, the components of blood, and also blood typing. So as an introduction to the cardiovascular system, we just mentioned that you do have the heart, the blood, and the blood vessels that are all involved with the system. We know that the heart is required to pump the blood out to the tissues, so it's not only carrying oxygen and nutrients, but also it picks up waste products like carbon dioxide and the other waste from the metabolic processes that are going on. We know that the blood vessels are the series of tubes that go out into all the tissues, and their responsibility is to distribute the oxygen and the nutrients and to receive the waste all throughout the tissues within the systemic level of the body. So with the heart, we know that it is sort of triangular or cone shaped. Recognize the apex would be the bottom part of the heart that rests near the diaphragm. The base of it is up toward the top, and then of course the aorta comes off right behind the sternum and then takes a deep arch and then becomes the abdominal aorta as it exits through the diaphragm. So we know that it is housed within the midline of the thoracic cavity. We know that it is back behind the sternum in the mediastinum area, but actually within the pericardial sac. So again, the apex would be the inferior portion of it, the base, the posterior side that faces the actual rib cage as the ribs come along from the posterior side of it. And if you did a fist, that's about the size of your heart. So the size of the hand is in direct relationship to the size of the heart. We also, based off of its anatomy, again, know that it lies medial between both sets of lungs. We mentioned the aorta. The other great vessel that we'll talk about would be the pulmonary trunk. And then we said that the apex of it rests on the diaphragm. It is situated a little bit toward the left side of the chest in a normal anatomical position. So here you see the cadaver, both in x-ray and with the cadaver, the location of the heart, and you can see where the apex is slightly toward the left, directly behind the sternum, and then of course encased by the rib cage. In the cadaver, you can see where the ribs have been taken back. You can definitely see the pulmonary trunk, the aorta, and the branches off of it, and see the diaphragm and how it rests there within the thoracic cage, but yet within the mediastinum, so that midline portion of it. As far as the chambers and some anatomical features that are exterior or external, we know that the top portion or the superior portion, you have both a right and a left atrium. So right and left atria, plural, a right and a left atrium, singular. Then the bottom portion, the posterior and inferior side, so both the posterior and inferior portion to the atria, you have both a right and a left ventricle, with the left ventricle being the strongest, more robust portion of all four chambers. Externally, you should be able to see the atrioventricular sulcus. So a sulci, remember, just like with the gyri and sulci of the brain, you had the extensions, which were the gyri, but the indentions were the sulci to increase surface area of the brain. So here you have these indentions between the atria and the ventricles, and of course these sulci are going to be used for the blood vessels, the coronary vessels, to reside in, so that you don't lose circulation to those particular vessels. You also not only have the atrioventricular sulcus, but you also have the interventricular sulcus. So in between both the right and the left ventricle, you have an external depression that is there for, again, the vessels that nourish the heart muscle to lie in, so that the heart wall doesn't push against the pericardial sac and cut off blood supply to the coronary circulation. And all this will make a little bit more sense as we get deeper into the heart and the portions of the heart. We know that atria receive blood from veins, so As a definition, we'll see later on that veins are defined by a strict definition that they bring blood back to the heart. So the atria will receive the deoxygenated blood on the right side and the oxygenated blood on the left side, both using veins, and then of course the blood will drain from the atria to the lower chambers or the inferior chambers, which are the ventricles, and then the ventricles' responsibility is to actually pump the blood into the great vessels. So arteries are going to carry the blood away from the heart, so those vessels are then responsible for delivering it either to the lungs or to the body tissues to offload the nutrients and the oxygen. So again, those main arteries and veins that are bringing blood to and from the heart are known as the great vessels. So we'll talk about the aorta in much detail, and we'll also talk about the pulmonary trunk.